Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Me, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. The new pacifista model, known as the Seraphim, are incredibly powerful cyborg and seem to possess not only great destructive capability, but also similar characteristics to the people that they look like. We don't know exactly how they were created, but there is a possibility that Dr. Vegapunk is using the pirate's DNA or lineage factor to create the Seraphim, which then somehow imparts some of their techniques of a certain pirate. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the Seraphim, how strong they are, and the possibility that the SSG is creating a Seraphim with the characteristics of Goldie Roger, the man also known as the King of the Pirates. But before we dive into the video, if you're new to the channel, or even if you've watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like, or even subscribe, and maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content, and if you'd like to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or your favorite with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So my friends, during chapter 1059 of One Piece, the new pacifistas, also known as the Seraphim, were revealed. Not only did they have incredible stamina, but they also seemed to possess some new techniques that were different than the original pacifista. These cyborgs were created by the SSG, which is an organization of scientists run by Vegapunk. But the Marines that were responsible for using them during the invasion of Amazon Lily was Kobe. During the invasion of Amazon Lily, in which the goal was to capture Boa Hancock, we were introduced to two different Seraphim, but there's gotta be a strong possibility that there are even more with very different physical forms and powers. The two that have been shown so far have the appearance of two ex-warlords. The first that appeared in the chapter had their face covered in shadows, but at the end of the chapter we were revealed to have seen the Seraphim that looked like a very young Boa Hancock. And we didn't see her fight, but we did see her shoot lasers from the palm of her hand. This Seraphim Hancock is also very durable and incredibly strong because the Amazon women were not even able to put a scratch on her body, despite the fact that the Amazon warriors are very powerful and were fighting her for quite a while. Now, the very little that we do know about these powerful cyborg children is that the Seraphim are the new pacifista units developed by the Marine Special Science Group, also known as the SSG, and it's being led by the world's greatest scientist, Dr. Vegapunk. These weapons were created with the intention of replacing the original 7 warlords as one of the 3 great powers in the world, and it's for this reason that they seem to have a very similar appearance to the former warlords of the sea. However, there is a possibility that the SSG might not just stop there with the appearance of the warlords, but rather also go after other pirates, such as the Straw Hats themselves, or even Shanks' crew, because they don't use devil fruits. This would enable the SSG to create skilled Seraphim from Shanks, Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, Yasopp, among other powerful pirates of his crew that we haven't even learned about, making the Seraphim all the more powerful and deadly. Now, one thing we don't know about these Seraphim is how much hockey they really seem to have, because we saw that Teach was able to use a hockey-coated arm to stop an attack from a Seraphim Mihawk. But if they did hockey, and if it were to be strong enough to compare with the hockey of Shanks' crew, or even just come really close, these Seraphim would be as strong as the original pirates because they would have the additional modifications. And because of these other abilities and the technology being put into them, they would use their hockey in a much more efficient way. Maybe not the same way as the original users, for example like Roger and Shanks, because they're the pirates with the highest level of hockey that we've seen so far. They became great and well-known pirates, recognized for knowing how to use the full potential of the 3 hockey versions that one can possess. I mean, Shanks is able to nullify an enemy's observation hockey, preventing them from ever being able to predict his movements. So if there were ever to be a Seraphim Shanks, this would be something that they might not be able to replicate because of the immense amount of control one would need to have over their hockey to do what Shanks can do. The same would go for any Seraphim made from Roger, and in fact we don't even know how these cyborgs are created, but everything indicates that it's through the DNA or the lineage factor of these pirates. I mean, we have seen that King was experimented on by the world government scientists, and it could have been our very Dr. Vegapunk at the head of the research team. So the research may have used King's DNA as a baseline form to create the cyborg, but then Vegapunk may have used the warlord's DNA to further enhance the machines, giving them the ability to use those pirates' techniques. And as far-fetched as this might sound, it is possible that they could be able to create a Roger Seraphim, because it was, after all, the Marines who ended up taking Roger's life in the end, and through his body and remains, they could have taken samples of his DNA and now may be able to replicate a small Roger Seraphim. So if you think about it, a cyborg created from Roger would be much stronger stronger than the ones that were already created, because Roger was considered the most powerful pirate, being able to face any enemy with his incredible level of hockey alone. Add on to the fact that Roger was an incredible swordsman, and very few people could stand to Roger. It would make this Seraphim an incredibly useful asset and weapon for the SSG and world government. But so far, we haven't seen all the Seraphim that exist. We've only been shown Mihawk's and Boa Hancock's Seraphim, showing very little about these new pacifistas that will obviously be the main weapon for the Marines moving forward. From what we've seen in the story and what we've had revealed, we do know that the Seraphim Hancock and Seraphim Mihawk were incredibly powerful. Although when it comes to the Seraphim Hancock, we saw that she was just able to use those laser blasts from her hands, and we didn't get to see her fighting techniques because we know that the real Boa Hancock is not only a very adept Devil Fruit user, but an immensely powerful fighter in her own right. So even if they couldn't replicate the Devil Fruit powers of the particular warlord in question, we do see that they're able to pick up some of the natural abilities. And this was clearly demonstrated by the Seraphim Mihawk, who was able to cut a mountain in half with his tiny Yoru reproduction, but it was just a smaller scale. In addition to the traits of those that they were copied after, these Seraphim also seem to have Lunarian biology, which makes them obviously superior and much more durable to ordinary humans. We also know in the past that Lunarians were considered a race of gods, but King is the only survivor of this race left. Lunarians are recognized by having darker skin, white hair, black wings, and a bunch of flames that burn on their backs. Not only do they possess great strength and endurance, but speed and the ability to switch between focusing on their speed or defense. Another thing we fully don't understand about the Seraphim yet is that most of them seem to have star-shaped pupils, and it's the only one that's patterned after Mihawk that has the round pupils that he has. And that really seems to be one of the things that leads us to believe that it is their DNA, because Mihawk too has those eyes of a falcon. And if it weren't for the eyes and the sword, this Seraphim would actually bear a very strong resemblance to that of King, which means there could even be a Seraphim that's out there patterned just like King, because it was his DNA after all that gave rise to the Seraphim in the first place. Like the earlier version of the pacifistas, the Seraphim have the letter PX written somewhere on their body, as seen on the chest of Seraphim Mihawk, so that they can be identified as pacifistas or even SSG creations. Just like their predecessors as well, Seraphim are very obedient and follow any order given to them without question, but they seem to follow it in a very reckless way and destroy anything in their path, even if an ally is in front of them. So if one were to use a Seraphim where innocents were around, this would be really unfavorable, and they could end up taking someone's life during an execution order, making sure that there was as much collateral damage as possible instead of trying to minimize it. But despite this great risk, the admirals and the Marine superiors consider them a great weapon to face pirates and enemies who would ever dare to oppose the world government and the Marines. Even the wiser Admiral Fujitora, who has a very strict and fair sense of justice, agreed on the use of these highly powerful cyborgs. In fact, he was convinced that the Seraphim would be a much better substitute for the warlords, considering them extremely useful and essential for any future battle. But going back to the fact that the Seraphim can't use Devil Fruit powers, or at least mimic them, this means that the SSG had to put other weapons on board. And not only just the lasers that we've seen, but maybe other weapons that will be revealed to us in the future issues. There's even a possibility that some of the future models we see might have access to very advanced weapons, not like the swords and the flintlocks we see in the hands of regular pirates, but something much more akin to the 500 years in the future we know where Vegapunk is from. And honestly, even if they didn't have access to advanced weaponry and just use the weapons from the pirates that they were based on, we know that they are still incredibly skilled. I mean, we saw in a scene where Seraphim Mihawk put Teach in a defensive position and was still able to cut the mountain behind him extremely easily. This left Teach momentarily startled, because it was the first time he had seen a Seraphim in action. So in closing, we'd just like to offer up the idea that if Seraphim are in fact created and based on the DNA or lineage factor of a pirate, this very well means that there are many other powerful Seraphim waiting in the wings to be revealed. And besides just the Warlord Seraphim, there could be a Gold D. Rogers Seraphim. And if there is a Seraphim of our former pirate king, it'd be easy to imagine that this would be the leader of the Cyborgs, of course because he would be the strongest among them, being used only in an emergency situation where the Marines and not even the world government could contain the enemies that would be coming going and confronting them. So Seraphim Roger could literally be the ace up the sleeve for the SSG, being the Seraphim that could even confront a Yonko, since Seraphim Mihawk was able to temporarily confront Teach. Now, when we saw Seraphim Mihawk pulled into Teach's black hole, we don't yet know if he's still alive or if he was full out defeated. However, if there was this theoretical Seraphim Roger, he could easily not only confront Teach, but possibly match his powers. Now, even though the Seraphim again couldn't use the full power of Roger, this still would make him one formidable ally. So with all that said, there are still many possibilities for these new pacifistas and Seraphim, and all we can do is wait to get more information about what the SSG has been planning to do with them and how powerful they may yet prove to be. And now, my friends, we'd love to know what you think about it. Do you think we're gonna see a Seraphim based on every one of the former warlords? And also, what do you think about the idea of the Seraphim Roger? I mean, let's be real, the world government were the ones that executed him, so it's quite possible that they were able to get some kind of sample from it. And finally, with the two Seraphim that we've seen so far, which Seraphim do you think we'll see next? Let us know what you think in the comments below. So as we wrap up today's video, I want to thank you all so much for watching the video all the way up to the very end. Be sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like or hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video. Let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.